Hey guys, this is Srini from blogcastfm.com and theschooloflife.com. A lot of you probably read my post on TwitTip about why 150 followers is all you need, and I'm guessing video couldn't be inserted into TwitTip. I thought there was going to be a video included, so I wanted to do this post as a follow-up for you guys about how to actually utilize some of the concepts that I was talking about in that post. I think it'll be a little clearer if I explain them through video, because I know that some of those things were pretty, they might have sounded somewhat obscure. So I wanted to talk about how I use TweetDeck and why this is actually a really useful process. For those of you who are using just the main Twitter interface, I know that some people complain about it, and I've found that third-party tools like Hootsuite and TweetDeck are 1,000 times more efficient in terms of how you manage Twitter, because you can have multiple accounts. I mean, I have accounts for Blogcast FM, I have accounts for the School of Life, and accounts for Flightster, which is my day job. So let's talk about a couple of things. One of the things I mentioned in the post is that I track a couple of different things, and the first thing I do is I track mentions. You'll see here that when you open up TweetDeck, you have the ability to track a couple of different things. You can track all your friends, mentions, direct messages, new followers. So I have one column where all I do is I track mentions. So this way I can keep track of anybody who mentions me or retweets any post that I write. So basically the cool thing here is you're looking and seeing anybody who's trying to start a conversation with you. And if you remember, in the post I talked about creating your inner circle. So David Crandall, who's a friend of mine, runs a site called Heroic Destiny, is somebody that is already in my inner circle. But let's say he wasn't. What I could do is I could follow him, and then I could say add to a group or a list. And you'll see here I have a bunch of different lists. Right now I make a point to only really keep track of one. And you'll see here that I have this list called my inner circle. So we've just added David to it. I'm not sure why he wasn't in it already. But you'll see here now what I've done is I've actually put him in that inner circle list. And so now what I want to do is basically I'm going to add that group or list or column. Now let's say you don't have a list. You can actually create one by just typing in the name of the list and then creating a new list, and then you can start adding people to it. But since I already have the list, what I want to do is I want to add another column where I actually keep track of all the people in that list. So let's go ahead and add it. And you'll see here now I have this column where it's basically a list of all the people who are in my inner circle. So pretty much what I do is anytime somebody mentions me, I add them to this list, so then I can keep track of ongoing of those people, and I can continue to build a relationship with them. I can continue an ongoing conversation with them. And the cool thing about this is you're actually focused all your efforts on Twitter on the people that truly want to engage with you. Each one of these people has either had a conversation with me or tweeted a post or something, and I've done the same for them. And the cool thing is that you go from just treating it as a broadcasting tool to truly using Twitter as a conversational tool. And the value of doing this has been absolutely tremendous. I found that once I started doing this, the number of tweets I've gotten on certain posts went from from around 8 to 10 to over 30 in certain cases. So this is pretty cool. Another thing I do is I track mentions of Blogcast FM, which is the podcast that I run. And you'll see here pretty much anytime we do interviews. I primarily do most of my tweeting from the School of Life account, so what I'll usually do is I'll add people who tweet Blogcast FM interviews into my School of Life inner circle, so that way I can engage with them as well. Which I think this is really cool because, again, you're really focusing all your efforts on the people who are interested in engaging with you. So I want to show you one more thing that I thought was really interesting. And this is following the mainstream media on Twitter. I want to basically show you something. When I came back from Blog World, one of the things that I learned was that a lot of the mainstream media people, journalists particularly, are all on Twitter. So I decided to do a Google search for journalists on Twitter. And if you give this a second, hopefully it'll launch here quickly. And I noticed that there was a site called muckrack.com. And the cool thing with Muckrack is it actually has a list of all the various journalists for all the major media outlets and the areas that they cover. So let's do this. I'm going to pull up Muckrack here in a second. And you'll see you have journalists on Twitter. And what's awesome about this, I mean, it's one additional way in addition to Harrow that you can actually connect with the mainstream media. And you'll see here basically you have all of the major news sources, and you can even look at the people by the category they cover. So let's look at travel, since that's one that I work on for my day job. And what you'll see here is if I go to travel, if it comes up here in a second, it's a little slow, you'll see here that I can look at people. And I don't recommend you do this mass follow thing, but the cool thing is I can see exactly what media outlet each person works for. I can see, what the topic they cover is. So let's look at this woman here, Jennifer Leo. She covers the LA Times, and I could follow her. And so what I did was I actually created a list of journalists related to the industries that I was interested in. So here you'll see basically I have a list called The Journalists and Media. And there's a couple of people here who are really cool. I think one of them, right now you're not seeing any updates, there we go. Kara Swisher, she is actually the social media editor for the New York Times. So I think these are fairly influential people, but I think what's interesting here is that you have an opportunity to build relationships with the mainstream media just the same way you do with anybody else on Twitter. And so I recommend that you actually treat these people the same way you do people that are in your inner circle. I wouldn't try to just say, oh, hey, share links with them or hope they retweet your stuff. These are probably really great people to know, and if you can build a personal relationship with them and eventually make them part of your inner circle, I think some really, really cool things could happen with that. So hopefully you guys have found this tutorial somewhat useful. Again, this is TweetDeck for those of you who don't know. As I said, I recommend that you get away from using Twitter as an interface, just because the interface is kind of weak, and I think that TweetDeck or third-party tools really make it much more possible to do a lot with Twitter. I think you can take this entire process and get even more sophisticated with it. This is what I use, and this is how I've done it. So hopefully this is basically a nice supplement to the why you only need 150 followers post. So again, this is Srini from theschooloflife.com and blogcastfm.com. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me at srinirao@gmail.com. Thanks.